Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all are having a good morning this morning. As we all know, we have hit the anniversary of September 11th, 20 years ago, this very morning. Um, and what's weird is the sky is as clear as it was on the day that it happened. Even though the original September 11th happened on a Tuesday, we are here on a Saturday to commemorate that day when thousands of people have died needlessly at the hands of terrorists. I have taken a good amount of time this morning to keep things quiet, even though I do have 9/11 stuff on my TV. I'm kind of keeping things on the down low to keep things in good taste in terms of remembering my friend Marnie Pont O'Doherty, who died that morning 20 years ago. I hope she's in a better place. We can only hope. But how many of you remember where you were and what you were doing on that particular morning? I would like to know. Me, my room was set up a little bit different. I was sleeping in my bed. I had my little chihuahua, my little taffy boy, sleeping next to me in the bed. And it was chilly that morning, so didn't really think nothing of it. I was sleeping and I got woke up by a phone call from my older brother. I had to feel around under my sheets because I had the bed or phone under my sheets. I picked up the phone and I'm like, hello. And my brother says, hey, Pam, it's John. Are you up? And I said, no, I was asleep, dude. And he's like, well, turn on the TV. And I'm like, what? Why? And he says, well, there was an attack on the World Trade Center this morning. And I'm like, come on. And he says, no, turn on the TV. There was an attack on the World Trade Center. So I turned on the TV, and it looked like something that you would see out of a movie. You know? You don't think that things like that could happen here, but it did. It wasn't just the World Trade Center that was attacked, mind you. We had an attack on our Pentagon, and we had a plane go down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And, it was one of the scariest days in my life because, like I said, I was sleeping in my bed. I had my dog in bed with me. He usually keeps me a little warmer, and I'm feeling around for my phone. I pick up the phone, and my brother said that there was an attack on the World Trade Center. And looking at those images, I began to get really frightened, because I had my parents on the coast. They were at Myrtle Beach. And I had another relative that was down in Florida, a sister in law that was down in Florida. And my sister was out of her house. Little did I know that she would end up in the hospital over that course of days, health issues. But I spent many days here at home trying to figure out why somebody would want to attack us. And the day those towers were attacked, we went to war. We were at full out war at what happened that day. And I remember seeing a lot of these 9/11 films and specials. And I felt so bad for the people that fell out of the building. I'm going to say fell. Maybe they didn't have a choice. I don't know. They were trying to find a way out. But the people that were in the impact zone were basically faced with the fact that they are going to die. They may not walk out of this alive. And it really hurts me to know that many fathers, sons, and daughters and other relatives were lost. But if you think our country came apart that day, no, it didn't. And no, people in our country were not celebrating that day, no matter what the Trumpster may think or other people may think, the conspiracy freaks. I saw people coming together and people crying when they saw people falling from the building. And it hurts me that we cannot get that unity back. We have lost so much in the last 20 years, if you want to know my opinion. You know, what I thought America was about was a brotherhood, brothers and sisters and nonconformists linked arm to arm, willing to defend her country. Now, 20 years later, have we lost our ability to feel um, a brotherhood and a commitment to each other? I believe we have. And yeah, I do know somebody that died in the World Trade Center. I don't know what Marnie was doing that morning, but I had no idea that she would perish that day. Marnie Pont O'Doherty, the woman that I knew, was a Rick Springfield fan who came down from her state to see a concert in Columbus the year before. And we had a great time. We jammed to Rick's music and we got to meet him together. And it was one of the most fulfilling moments in my young life. At that time, I was 30 years old and just trying to gain a footing in society, really. What I remember about my time with Marnie was she was always very nice. I think I have some pictures, but I don't know if I want to share them on this platform. I may do that in the future. But we got to meet the man. We got to meet her, our favorite singer. I had 3 CDs with me that day. He signed them, and we got to meet and talk with him. And he uh, told her and a friend, make sure this young lady gets out to her bus. I don't want her walking alone. And he hugged me, helped me back in my wheelchair, and I was gone. I went out to the bus. As we walked to the bus, we were laughing and having a great time and talked about how the Chipmunks covered Jesse's Girl back in 1982 on their album Chipmunk Rock. And she's like, really? And I'm like, oh, yeah. I would have brought the record, but I didn't want it to warp in the sun if I had the record inside. And we were laughing and we were joking the whole way. And then we get down there and the bus is there. And the gentleman that was at the concert with us was already loaded on the bus and they were waiting for me. And they get me on the lift. And I think she and her friend kissed me goodbye on the cheek. And I left. I was severely sunburned that day, but that is a good memory to have. And that is what I remember about my friend, Marnie Pont O'Doherty. But she was a beautiful lady with a beautiful spirit. We liked pretty much the same albums that Rick had put out, and we used to hang out on a place called Ricktopia. Those memories keep me close to her somehow. But I didn't realize that she had died until his newsletter. We still got newsletters by mail, regular mail. It talked about her death in one of his newsletters. And I've never forgotten that. But how many of you remember where you were and what you were doing that day? I was just in my bed, enjoying the coolness of the morning and the warmth of my little puppy dog right next to me in the bed. My brother calls and said there was an attack on the World Trade Center. And he had to push me to turn on my TV. And the images I saw looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. It was one of those times I really wish it wasn't. I wish it wasn't real, And I was on the phone with not only my older brother, but my sister, and even my mom and dad that were down in Myrtle Beach. My sister was out in Gahanna, Ohio at the time where she lived. And she said, well, if you need anything, you call me. But I was too scared. I was too nervous to eat. I was too nervous to do anything. And I was constantly on the phone with my mom and dad. And I was like, Mom, Dad, did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? She goes, yeah, we heard about it, my mom said. But don't worry, we're safe. If you want to call us, if you want to keep calling us, you're more than welcome to. Don't worry about us. If we have anything happen, we'll call you. But with what's been going on in the country that day, it wasn't just the World Trade Center that was hit. We had morons that wanted to hit the Pentagon and do severe damage to our infrastructure. And who knows where the plane that crashed in Shanksville was going. I mean, really. You had innocent people on these aircrafts that were going on trips, going home. And I know one lady that went to New York and was doing a thing of business up in the building. Um, One girl had just recently gotten married, and she called members of her family and said, "I'm not going to make it." And I know some of these families have the last messages their relatives have ever sent. And it's really scary. Check out the documentary if you could find it. The phone calls from the towers. That'll tell you everything you need to know. And I know somebody on this platform posted some of the last calls that came out of the World Trade Center. In fact, there was one guy toward the end of the tape who was on the phone with the fire department. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, we're coming, we're coming." And as he's trying to maintain a sense of calm, you hear his last words were, "Oh God," and "ah," and the line went dead. Something that you never, ever, ever forget. So I get up this morning. I'm doing the usual gaming stuff at 7:30, and I'm debating whether or not to hear the reading of the names. And I had to stop because I was crying and just feeling all those feelings about what various family members may have missed. Those that have left this world, not in the way that they wanted to, but I can't think of what all they missed. Whether they had kids that, hey, whether the youngsters that grew up and saw all that happen at their young ages, what they were doing. And I have to think about all the firemen that have died. I know that they were fighting to keep. Well, that's good. But how many of you remember where you were in 2001 when the attacks happened on our capital? And to be honest, I absolutely remember everything. And I had two former nieces that lived with me, that would come in and out every so often. They're like, "Aunt Pammy, why would somebody attack our buildings?" And I was very frank with them. And I said, "Well, there are some countries in the world that don't like us, that we have the freedoms that we have. And there are people out there that are willing to take us down for the freedoms that we have. It's sad, but it's the truth." And I just felt so hurt and wounded by what happened. I can't imagine what the survivors go through each and every year. You hear them read the names of these fallen people, and you can't help but cry with them. You might not know these people, but you can't help but cry with them. I always make it a point to watch something on September 11th because if it's happened once, it could happen again. Because 2001 was not the first time that the World Trade Center was attacked, okay? You had the attack back in 1993 where a bomb or something went off down in the bottom of the building and it had a lot of damage to the building. Then they had to restructure part of the building. And another place they don't ever really talk about anymore was the Marriott that was tucked between the World Trade Center. Um, I know one lady by the name of Amy Tang was working the desk that morning and was getting ready to do an interview for a possible promotion. And when the World Trade Center was hit, there was a Irish guy that was in the hotel and he was getting ready to do what he had to do that morning and then go home to be with his daughter that was turning 11 that day. And the scary thing is as he was helping a burn victim by the name of Jenny Ann, his sister was on one of the planes, and I think his sister and I think his daughter. So he lost family members that day without realizing it. But the only thing he had to do that day was to help a young woman by the name of Jenny Ann who got doused with fuel and her hair was burnt and her clothes were burnt. And he didn't leave her until they loaded her into the ambulance. And they had footage of him with her as they were loading her up to take her to the hospital. But he would later come to find out that Jenny Ann succumbed to her injuries. And he had a double blow that day. And let's get back to Hotel Ground Zero, ladies and gentlemen. There was a mother and a daughter there. The daughter had MS, and she was staying at one part of the hotel. She was down a couple of floors from her mother, and she woke up and got dressed and was sitting in her wheelchair when the planes hit the tower. One of the planes hit the tower. And her mother came down, and her daughter didn't want her mother to leave at one point. Her mother's like, well, I'm going to go upstairs and get my jewelry. I'll go up and get my jewelry and we'll get out of here. But her daughter said that I was saying, oh, it'll be all right. She says, it'll be all right. They'll come and put the fire out and everything will be all right. But she said, in truth, I was scared. I didn't want my mom to leave me. So they were trying to get out, but with what's going on in terms of the building, the elevators weren't working. So they were sitting in the daughter's room, and all of a sudden, I think some bellhops or whatever came up and they saw them sitting there. And they're like, what the hell are you still doing here? And she told the gentleman, she says, well, I really can't get down the stairs. I'm in a wheelchair. So they found like a freight elevator and got her down. And when they got out, they took off and ran. But somewhere in the mayhem, mother and daughter get split up. And next thing you know, the building starts coming down. The mother's pulled into a restaurant. And she's trying to get out there to find her daughter, who's in a motor scooter. And that's scary, not knowing where your sibling is. But the one in the wheelchair had to get up next to a building and wait for that soot and ash to pass over her. But she managed to get on a ferry, and they took her wherever they took her to. And she sat there for close to 3 hours and was waiting for her mother. And she was so on survival mode, as she said. She said she was in survival mode. She said she felt sure that her mother would be on one of those. And she sat there for hours. And when she finally saw her mom, she was telling everybody that was around her, that's my mom. That's my mom. And I think her little world was then okay at that point because she had her mother. But there were a lot of people, ladies and gents, that weren't so lucky. I don't think I could ever go back to being complacent that nothing will ever happen here. It wasn't just the World Trade Center that was attacked. We had an attack on our Pentagon. We had an attack possibly on our Capitol, possibly going to happen. So, yeah. So don't think that just because nothing happens on this day to commemorate 9/11, because we know there's a lot of whack jobs and assholes that want to tear down the very fabric of our country. But you know what? The day that happened, we didn't lose our freedom. We came together as a country as we should be. I'm going to get off here for now and go to the bathroom, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Maybe I'll redo this video. But think about it, ladies and gents. We could be at that stage again. We could be attacked again. We don't know when. We don't know where, but it could happen again. But go back and watch some of the 9/11 stuff that's on the History Channel. And if you want, go on some of these news articles that talk about the names of the lost. We can never forget. I certainly won't. Especially when you have family in different parts of the country. My sister-in-law was in Florida doing nail shows. You know, where women paint nails for a living. She had to be grounded. You know, she was going to fly out that day and come home, but they grounded all planes. And I got stuck doing bag watching duty because my sister wound up having a health scare, and it put her in the hospital. She had to lose one of her tubes, if that makes any difference. But I was scared not only for my country, I was scared for my family, and my mom and dad were in Myrtle Beach. So, yeah. But go back and watch some of that footage on 9/11, and don't tell me that you're not affected. You know, and the sad thing is, people are still dying from 9/11 effects. Ben Vereen, the guy from Pippin, and, you might know him as Lou from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He saw what was going down, and he knew he had to do something to help our first responders. And now he is suffering from called after effects of 9/11. You know, and he wasn't going to let a bunch of dumbass terrorists try to tear our country down. He's like, not in my neighborhood. You think we're going to bend to the Taliban or whoever was responsible for this? No, we didn't. We came together. And as I said, in 20 years, we have regressed from being a country of unity to a country of division and hatred. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Well, I'm going to get off. I'll try this video again sometime this afternoon. Maybe I'll do a further discussion when more and more people are free from whatever they're doing this Saturday. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.